Hey everybody, welcome to the show, Around the Nation right here, TYT Nation, Jeff Waldorf here with you. Welcome to the show. Gonna be a great show today, got a lot of stuff, Supreme Court decisions, we got Ivanka Trump, of course, a lot of important stuff, also a lot of fun stuff. For example, we have a GOP representative threatening Delta Airlines. Wonderful. Then we also have Trump's tax cuts, what's going on with them, the richest 2% of Americans, how much did they make, and what we could actually do with that money. That would be interesting to find out. And then just lots of other stuff. We got Supreme Court going after union rights, all that stuff. And we even have a segment on Alex Jones. Just to start out the day with a little bit of fun. So, again, we've got a great show. Thanks for sticking around here. Make sure to stick around for the next hour or more. Sometimes we run a little long for some of these stories and, of course, my commentary on these stories. If you haven't already, please give us a like and a share, especially share. Sharing is, of course, caring. It helps us out a great deal. So please share. I don't think the YouTube algorithm is working correctly or something, but I would love to see you guys share this stream and get back to close to 300 viewers. So, all right. Anyway, a lot of stuff. Patrons. Thank you. I want to thank the patrons, of course, for supporting the show, patreon.com/TYTNation. Okay. That out of the way, let's go into the next story, or the first story of the day, Alex Jones. What is going on here? Okay. Conspiracy theorist Alex Jones is in a little bit of trouble after, of course, posting a couple of videos claiming that the survivors of Parkland shooting are nothing more than crisis actors. Specifically, he's been going after David Hogg. Now, David Hogg is a survivor of the shooting. He's also the son of a former FBI agent. Cue conspiracy theories. Here comes Alex Jones. Oh, working with the FBI, working with the media to do these crisis, to be a crisis actor, and all to take your guns. In fact, he's done several, at least 2 videos on this, and he's been called out for it. So he's gotten into a little bit of a trouble. As I said, he now has 2 copyright strikes. If he gets a third strike, then his channel could be banned. Now, I know a lot of people are like, yeah, ban his channel. But wait, I'm going to have a little bit of a controversial opinion on this that you may or may not agree with. But before I get into what I actually think about this, as far as the story goes, I do want to have a little bit of fun with it before I get super dour and super serious. On Twitter, earlier, he invited David Hogg onto a show, Alex Jones. And David Hogg actually agreed. Now, first of all, let me get the Twitter thread here. Twitter thread. Alex Jones said, "I would love to have you on today to clear up some of the disinformation that has been put out about my statements concerning the tragedy. I noticed you're calling me a shit journalist and snake oil salesman when I've never called you any disparaging names, except when you called him a crisis actor, basically a fake and a fraud. But okay, putting that aside, he said, I've never been sued by survivors of any school shooting. Please stop the defamation. My YouTube channel with 2+ billion views has now been frozen after CNN lobbied it to be closed in your name. Again, that's not true at all. CNN didn't lobby anybody. It's crazy though, right? Oh, no, CNN is trying to shut down my channel. What are you doing? He's working with CNN. No, he's not. He's not working with CNN. He's pushing back against your bullshit. He said, again, Mr. Hogg, in your name, CNN has shut down my speech on YouTube. It is critical that you come out and support the First Amendment and not let them use you to end free speech. All right, so why is it the conservatives always have the wrong idea about free speech? They think that, oh, no, on Twitter, free speech. No, you don't. Look, you're the same people that argue for privatization of everything, right? Well, guess what? When it comes to private corporations and using their platforms, you actually don't have free speech. Now, that sucks, and I wish it were not the case, but that's simply how it is. That's not how I feel about it. That's how it is. We actually don't have free speech on these different platforms. So, look, if they want to kick people off YouTube, they have the right to do that. Now, I am strongly against that. So here's what I'm going to go and sort of defend Alex Jones. Now, I'm not defending any of the things that he says. What he says are terrible, terrible things. He spreads conspiracy theories and all that. But you know what? I don't think he should be shut down. I don't think you should get copyright strikes. Because it's not a copyright strike, but you know what I mean. Strikes on things like, even if it's conspiracy stuff. Well, if you're going to shut down every conspiracy, there goes every conspiracy on, like, there goes every conservative channel, just about. And also, there goes some left-leaning channels. Now, let me give you an example here. Okay, so you guys are probably aware of the David Pakman show. David Pakman does really good commentary. He breaks things down. He's a pretty good YouTuber, right? He got a strike. Why? Right-wing trolls flagged him. They saw one of his videos pushing back against the conspiracy theories, spread by people like Alex Jones on the right wing. And so he put out a video debunking that. All these right-wing trolls came and flagged him, and now he has a strike on his channel. 2 more, and David Pakman is banned. How far are we going to go? We're going to ban Alex Jones, then we're going to ban David Pakman, we're going to ban Jimmy Dore. Who's next? No, I don't like this at all. I'm not comfortable with banning people's channels. Yes, I know this is not a free speech issue, but at the same time, you are taking people, like, you are going after them for their opinion on your platform. And that is very, very uncomfortable for me. Now, again, if it goes to making direct threats to people, if there are videos making direct threats and maybe inciting people to violence, then okay, like, we'll think about that, right? But again, this is a really, really hard line for me to draw, because at the same time, like, you don't want people to get shut down, because there are so many ways for you to be able to misuse this, especially using the idea of conspiracy theories. Well, JFK, the shooting of JFK, that's a conspiracy theory, right? Well, some conspiracy theories end up being true. Not every conspiracy theory is off the wall lunatic or lunacy. Some obviously are. 80% man, 80% gorilla, 80% pig. I mean, come on. But he shouldn't get banned for it. And look, I'm somebody who, look, I know the Parkland shooters, they're not crisis actors. It's not false flag. It's ridiculous. And I know that the Parkland survivors have gotten a lot of shit from a lot of different people. A lot of harassment and terrible messages and death threats. And look, part of that is thanks to the videos from Alex Jones and his crazy followers. At the same time, I don't think that should allow a platform to shut someone down for what their viewers are doing. So again, this is I guess this is an issue that hits home with me, right? Because again, I'm a YouTuber. I make my living on YouTube. So if you give them this power to basically shut people down for opinions you might not disagree with and some theories, well, who's to say what's a conspiracy theory? You could talk about wealthy people getting together to conspire to go and cut taxes on themselves. Oh, it's a conspiracy theory. Or, oh, the DNC got together with the media and conspired to rig the nomination for Bernie Sanders. Or I'm sorry, against Bernie Sanders for Hillary Clinton. Conspiracy theory. Shut them down. Shut them down. I'm not comfortable with this at all. So as funny as it is to watch Alex Jones grovel for his channel, at the same time, I think this sets a dangerous precedent. And again, David Pakman's already been hit for doing the complete opposite of Alex Jones. So I'm very, very worried about what's going to happen in the future for people with different opinions that aren't necessarily mainstream. So, again, I'm very concerned, and I do not like the direction that this is going. Okay. Let's move on. Let me do this real quick. The joys of running a show by yourself. All right. Now, White House Chief of Staff John Kelly is not happy with Ivanka's troll. Ivanka's troll. I'm just dropping the ball today. Now, White House Chief of Staff John Kelly is not happy with Ivanka Trump's role in the White House. Now, personally, I'd like to find out what the hell that role actually is, because I have no idea. What does she actually do? Exactly, that's the question. Now, according to a source talking to CNN, Kelly has complained privately that she is just playing government. She's not actually doing anything. She's playing government. Oh, well, okay. That makes sense. She's not a politician. She has no experience, no relevant skills, and brings nothing to the table. Yes, she is playing government. So, and look, I'm kind of surprised that it took this long for John Kelly to get upset. Just saying. Now, according to the report, several White House officials have said the lines are beginning to blur between Ivanka Trump's role as a senior advisor and first daughter. And Kelly's expressed irritation with what he sees as her jumping between those two roles when it's convenient. So basically, she's trying to have it all. She's trying to be daughter, first daughter, and also political advisor to the president. Now, let me give you an example here. Now, her role is she is an advisor to the president. So, look, when it comes to the actions of the president, you should be able to ask her a question. Well, they did about her father's sexual accusers in the midst of the Me Too movement. So, here's her answer on that question.
I think it's a pretty inappropriate question to ask a daughter if she believes the accusers of her father when he's affirmatively stated that there's no truth to it. I believe my father. I know my father.
It's an inappropriate question. I think it's very inappropriate to ask a daughter. Well, then they're not asking you as a daughter. They're asking you as one of President Trump's innermost cabinet members, one of his advisors, his closest advisors. We're not asking you as a daughter. Look, again, you can't have it both ways. You are either first daughter or a senior level White House official. And in that case, if you are, then you should be able to answer questions. Look, her father has been accused of sexual assault. Not by one woman, not by two women, by a lot of women. Okay? And so, yes, you should be able to answer that question. If you can't, there's the door. Get out, get out, get out. Again, what does she do there anyway? And do anything. The one thing maybe she might get a little bit of credit for, and something that actually got dismissed about a lot by John Kelly, was her proposal to increase the child tax credit. Well, they called that a pet project. Way to help women there. Again, nothing on sexual harassment, nothing on fair wages, nothing like that. Just Ivanka herself. There's nothing there. There's just nothing there. Now, another source familiar with the president's thinking says Ivanka's influence on his decision-making has been exaggerated. Gee, you think? No, she has no influence on his decision making. None whatsoever. And again, she was supposed to be the liberal voice. Well, so much for being liberal. She ain't liberal at all. No, she, just like Melania, right? She's like, oh, I'm there. I'm going to say certain things, but you think Trump's going to listen? You think Donald Trump's going to listen to that? You think he's going to follow that example? Absolutely not. I mean, for Christ's sakes, Melania's out there talking about, you need to be kind to people and not bully people on social media. Well, maybe you should apply that to your home. Just saying. Or maybe you should apply that to your husband. Yeah. So, as I said, there's nothing there. Now, he generally, as I said, does not heed her advice when it comes to serious policy debate. And again, she doesn't really know anything, so I guess that makes sense. And look, she was in favor, and a good example of this, she was in favor of staying in the Paris Climate Agreement. He was not, and guess what? We are no longer in the Paris Climate Agreement. But she is looked at in the West Wing as one of the few people who can sue the president when he is indignant or angry. Okay, well, that's at least one thing that she does. She sues him from while he's angry. Now, knowing that, what is she even doing as a leader of a delegation to South Korea? I don't know. Actually, I do know. It's nepotism. Unfortunately, it's nepotism of the real kind, of the legal kind, right? According to CNN, the decision to send her to South Korea did not sit well with some of the senior officials in the West Wing. Kelly, for example, was not enthusiastic about a South Korea trip, according to a person close to President Trump said. Largely because of the situation with North Korea and how you might actually need some sort of diplomacy there. Now, does Ivanka Trump have any idea how to do diplomacy? No, she's not a diplomat. All she is a spoiled, entitled daughter who grew up with money. And that's it. She doesn't know policy. She doesn't know diplomacy. She brings nothing to the table. In fact, this person said, this isn't like going to Italy. The stakes are far higher and more complex. Now, the concerns of Kelly and others about Ms. Trump were aired in private, according to people familiar with the matter. Kelly was advised by those closest to him that it would be a losing battle to oppose Ivanka as the delegation's leader. That's the problem. You're going to have Ivanka Trump, little girl, who's going to, be put above everything else. Family is going to come first. So it doesn't matter if the policy is incredibly important or if the position is incredibly important. Doesn't matter to Trump. He's going to put family first. That is the problem. That's why you don't hire your family and put them into positions. That's why we have nepotism laws. But unfortunately, as I said, since she is not put at the head of any agency, but is instead an advisor, she can stay in the White House and even have an office inside of the White House. Now, this has Kelly pissed for two different reasons. For one, I guess he is mad that Ivanka Trump is leading this delegation, but he's also mad that he's in the position of having to decide whether or not to give Jared Kushner security clearance. Now, look, I don't think Jared Kushner should be trusted with security clearance, but he's stuck in the position of either give him that clearance that he does not need, or, well, he needs it for the job, but that he does not deserve, or he risks the wrath of denying a member of the Trump family. So he's in a tough spot. I don't envy him at all. In fact, I do not think he's actually going to last in this position. It's no secret that John Kelly, not a fan of Ivanka Trump or Jared Kushner, and they in turn are not a fan of John Kelly. Look, it's been reported earlier that Kelly basically cut off access to her father in the White House. You don't do that. And now, of course, the knives are out, and this is the continuance of the feud. Tick tock, man. He is not going to last. Especially now that this is out in the press. And it kind of makes you wonder who actually leaked it. Again, mark my words. John Kelly, not going to last. Okay. Now let's get to some real news. Earlier today, the Supreme Court had ruled that immigrants held by the government facing deportation are no longer entitled to bond hearings even after months or years of detention. Basically, the Supreme Court has authorized indefinite detention. In a splintered 5-3 decision, the court's conservatives said that the relevant statute does not hint, as Justice Samuel Alito wrote, at the broad reading of the right to bail hearings adopted by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. Now, that lower court had earlier ruled that an immigrant held in detention must be given bond hearing every 6 months, and that detention beyond the initial 6-month period is only permitted if the government can prove that this person needs to be detained any further. So this is what's going on, right? You can take a nonviolent immigrant and lock them up if you believe that they committed a crime. Indefinitely. You don't have to have bond hearings anymore. You can keep them beyond 6 months. You can keep them a year, 3 years. It's already happened before. In fact, this case was based on a case that had happened previously where somebody who was joyriding, who had a little bit of drugs, had two different convictions, misdemeanor drug possession and joyriding charge, ended up getting put in prison for 3 years. 3 years. Now, that's what they can do, and now they can do it, again, indefinitely. Earlier, the Ninth Circuit was able to reverse that and make it so that they needed to have those hearings to make sure that people were a threat that needed to be kept in prison. So this, of course, Supreme Court decision reverses that. Oh boy. Now this decision, of course, brought a dissent from Justice Stephen Breyer. Now Breyer said this. He said, the many thousands of individuals involved in this case are persons who believe they have the right to enter into or remain in the United States. And a sizable number of those people turned out to be right. So understand that. A lot of these people are immigrants. They are legal immigrants that get imprisoned and also faced deportation for something that they did. But again, they're legal immigrants. So again, this is the Trump administration basically cracking down on legal immigration. Now he continues, and I love this dissent. He said, we only need to recall the words of the Declaration of Independence. In particular, its insistence that all men and women have certain unalienable rights, and that among them is the right to liberty. He called this ruling a, quote, legal fiction. Whatever the fiction, would the Constitution leave the government free to starve, beat, or lash those held within our boundaries? If not, then, whatever the fiction, how can the Constitution authorize the government to imprison arbitrarily those who, whatever we might pretend, are in reality here in the United States? And in the United States, we are not supposed to indefinitely detain someone without a hearing, without bail, without any of that. Now, Breyer added, no one can claim, nor since the time of slavery has anyone, to my knowledge, successfully claimed that persons held within the United States are totally without constitutional protection. Now, he was joined in his dissent by Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Sonia Sotomayor. Elena Kagan had recused herself because of her previous work during the Obama administration. Now, all the conservative justices, of course, argued that, no, the lower court ruling, we weren't even supposed to hear this. That's not our job. So, and also, yeah, we think you should be able to basically keep people in jail indefinitely. Wonderful. Now, the ruling from the Ninth Circuit Court gave a 6-month deadline that applied to a wide range of immigrants from people detained after entering the United States for the first time to long-time legal residents. Now, the person I was talking about earlier was Alejandro Rodriguez. Now, Alejandro Rodriguez was a permanent legal resident. He came to the country when he was a baby and became a legal resident. Now, the Department of Homeland Security started removal proceedings because of a conviction for misdemeanor drug possession and joyriding. So again, have a misdemeanor for drugs, likely marijuana, which shouldn't be illegal in the first place, and joyriding. So you don't hurt anybody. It's a non-violent crime. And what happens to him? He gets locked up for 3 whole years. Come on. This guy had a job. He had children to take care of, but no, let's lock him up. And now they have the ability to lock anybody up who's an immigrant indefinitely. That's not a good sign. That's not a good situation. Now, the Trump administration has shown that it is extremely anti-immigrant. And a lot of our people that are in prison right now are people in prison, federal prisons, I should say, for immigration crimes, for crossing the border illegally, or other things related to their immigration status. And now we're going to keep them in prison indefinitely. Who's going to pay for that? You're going to pay for that. Instead of letting them out of prison and all that. So, look, it's a terrible situation. Now, there's a little bit of hope, I guess. What they're doing is they're sending it back to the lower courts. However, now the lower courts have to decide whether or not the detainees have a constitutional right to a bail hearing. Well, yes. I'm with Stephen Breyer on this one. They absolutely do. They're in this country. They should have constitutional protections. We should not be able to lock people up indefinitely forever. Just because they emigrated here does not mean that they do not have rights. So, this is not a good ruling. Not a good day if you're an immigrant, especially. But, unfortunately, it's everything that we expected out of a conservative Supreme Court. Okay. Moving on. Georgia's lieutenant governor is not happy with Delta Airlines. Now, recently, Delta ended their relationship with the NRA, basically giving them special bonuses, or not bonuses, but special rates, discounts for taking Delta flights. And then thanks to the backlash of the Parkland shooting and the survivors' activism, a lot of companies were like, okay, we're going to end these special discounts for people with the NRA. Now, Casey Cagle is not happy about it. And he said on Monday on Twitter that he would block any tax legislation that benefits Delta unless they reinstate their support for the gun rights group. Now, he tweeted, I will kill any tax legislation that benefits Delta unless the company changes its position and fully reinstates its relationship with the NRA. Corporations cannot attack conservatives and expect us not to fight back. So now we are at extortion. Great. Wonderful. Now, the Hill explains that Delta, headquartered in Atlanta, is seeking state approval to restore a sizable fuel tax break that expired several years ago. So, yes, this is a company that's asking for tax cuts. Wonderful, right? And I'm not defending their tax cut, but I am kind of calling out the corruption of the whole thing by pointing out that, look, these politicians, they control whether or not you get a tax break. So now this guy is basically saying, if you don't go the direction that I want to, ideologically, then I'm going to pull your money. I'm going to pull your tax break. Great. As I said before. Now, Cagle is also running for governor. Now, he issued a statement accusing those companies of, quote, viewpoint discrimination against conservatives and law-abiding gun owners. Okay, well, let me point out something here. The NRA, I guess, apparently has 5 million members, right? But it cannot claim that it represents those members. Most of those members actually agree with gun control measures, and which the NRA does not. No, the NRA represents gun manufacturers because they make more money off the sale of more guns. What is the NRA always pushing? More guns in the schools, more guns in private hands. It doesn't matter if you're, mentally ill, which they always say that's the problem. It's the mentally ill people getting a hold of guns. Well, you're in favor of mentally ill people getting more guns. They're in favor of everybody getting guns and more guns because that means more gun sales, right? But look, even if the NRA did represent its members, well, then those 5 million people are actually a very small percentage of American gun owners. So, but what Delta is doing, Delta is not exactly taking a stand because it's the right thing to do. Actually, it's because it's a more popular position. According to USA Today's Suffolk poll, of 1,000 registered voters nationwide, a majority of them, 61%, say that tightening gun control laws and background checks would prevent more mass shootings in the United States. 63% said semi-automatic weapons like AR-15s should be banned. 76% say that people who should be treated for mental illness should be banned from owning a firearm. And another CNN poll pointed out that 70% of Americans want tighter gun control measures overall. They're not taking a brave stand. They're doing it because most of their customers agree with that position. Now, of the 70%, by the way, of Americans nationwide that want gun control, 57% are gun-owning households. These are gun owners saying, yes, let's have some common sense gun control because we've gone insane in this country with mass shootings. Makes sense, right? So again, not a moral stand. It's business. And most businesses do not want to be on the wrong side of an issue because they don't want to lose their customers. So maybe this tax break is not worth the loss of customers. Now, I'm not saying the leaders of Delta are only concerned with the money, but again, they are a multinational corporation, meaning that they will obviously take the money into account. But at the same time, I'm pretty sure their leaders, people in the company, don't want to see kids get slaughtered and don't agree with the NRA. But more importantly, from a business standpoint, it seems like the NRA is sort of toxic to their business interests. But again, I want to address the corruption here. Now, Cagle has an obvious bias towards the NRA. I wonder if he's received money from them. But he's got a position of power. And he's saying, I will make sure that to fight against your tax cut if you don't agree with me. That is corruption. That is abuse of power. And I believe that is extortion. And it's really gross to see elected officials engage in it. Okay. I'm going to take a quick break here. We'll be back in a minute. So stay right here. We got more stories to coming up forward the rest of the show. So again, stay right here. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the show, Around the Nation, right here at TYT Nation. Jeff Waldorf here. If you haven't already, please give us a like and a share. Helps us out immensely. Thank you for that. Again, thank you to the patrons, patreon.com/TYT Nation if you want to support the channel. But again, sharing is caring. That's probably the best thing that you can do. All right. So let's get into more policy stuff. Let's talk about the Trump tax cuts. Okay. So President Trump had promised that his tax cuts would cause companies to invest in their workers, raise wages, spur innovation, and overall help the economy. Now, what's the reality on that? Well, I think it's been long enough to figure out that they have not worked. So far, wages are flat. Only a quarter of workers polled have seen the benefits of these tax cuts. So most people, regular people, working people, have not seen any sort of increase in their after-tax revenue. Of course, Paul Ryan was caught before he deleted the tweet, by the way, basically pointing out, oh, look, this school teacher got $1.50. Wow, $1.50. Wonderful. So now the average wealthy earner, as people making over $1 million a year, received a $50,000 tax cut. They certainly seen it. So again, more Republicans than Democrats, according to that polling, have seen an increase in their after-tax revenue, and that's because most of them are part of that wealthier group. And they love these tax cuts, which, by the way, are temporary. So the tax rates for the middle class, they're going to expire. The tax cuts for the rich, going from 35 to 21%, are forever. So now, one company, Pfizer, speaking about innovation, by the way, who benefited greatly from the tax cuts, they also actually ended their research on Parkinson's and Alzheimer's drugs. So much for innovation, right? So wages are flat. They didn't go up for the most part, unless it's, of course, activism from people trying to raise the minimum wage. And then you had one company that decided to end their research on potentially life-saving drugs. So what are they doing with that money then? If they're not raising wages, if they're not spurring innovation, if they're not investing in their workers, what are they doing? You know the answer. They're doing stock buybacks. They're buying back their own shares. Now, you might be wondering, but hey, look, doesn't that help the stock market and therefore is good for the economy? Well, no. What it does is that it inflates stock prices and basically only helps CEOs, because the benefits of the stock buybacks go right into the pockets of the executives, who are already doing incredibly well. In fact, let me give you an example here. Warren Buffett, and you know Warren Buffett is a hedge funder, runs Berkshire Hathaway. He enjoyed a $29 billion gain thanks to the Trump tax cuts. Well, there you go. Now, you might point out that, no, but look, it hasn't all been bad. What about the bonuses? I mean, some employees have gotten $1,000 bonuses. Yes, they've been very vocal about that. You know why? Good PR. It gives Trump a win, and it gives corporations a big win. Say, oh, look at that. We gave a giant bonus of $1,000 to each of our employees. Well, don't you want to cut taxes more? Because it's so good for the economy. It's so good for the worker. When in reality, look, most of that, yes, that is money. That is nice PR. And it does help certain families. That's for sure. However, it's pretty minuscule what the bonuses are compared to what they actually saved in taxes. Again, $29 billion for Berkshire Hathaway. Billions of dollars for places like Walmart. Now, if these companies actually did want to really share the wealth with their workers, they would raise their wages. That's what they would do. and they would raise them significantly, but they don't. Now, a lot of these companies, by the way, while giving out bonuses and saying, oh, it's because of the tax cuts, they've also been cutting jobs. Walmart, for example, Sam's Club, over 10,000 jobs. Comcast, AT&T, Carrier. A lot of these other companies have actually eliminated jobs. Why? It's because they don't need those jobs. Less people have money that they can spend. There's less demand for the products. There's also more efficiency, productivity when it comes to automation. So, yes, these companies may be doing fantastic, and they may be giving out bonuses to their workers, but they've also been taking away jobs with the other hand. So, now that said, there were companies that did decide to grow. In the fourth quarter, American company investments in things like factories and business equipment grew by 6.8%. Now, that's significant. But my question is, how many of these companies actually plan to do this before the tax cuts? Again, tax rates aren't really too determinative on whether or not companies are planning to expand. So, like, for example, if you have demand and you still have higher tax rates, well, you're still going to expand to meet that demand because those are potential customers, that's potential profit. So these tax cuts, again, they're not really all that determinative. All it was is that it's a gift to the donors. And that's the problem here. Tax cuts do not create jobs. Demand creates jobs if you have demands for goods and services. And again, there isn't a lot of demand because right now we have a minimum wage that is $7.25 an hour. That's horrible. That's worth less than it was in the 60s and 70s. So again, these companies, without all this demand to go and hire new people, what are they going to do? They're going to buy back their own stock. According to the New York Times, American companies have announced more than $178 billion in planned buybacks. It is the largest amount unveiled in a single quarter, according to Beer & I Associates, which is a research marketing firm. That's not all. Cisco said this month that in response to the taxes, it would bring back $67 billion in overseas cash, using $25 billion to finance additional share repurchases. Alphabet, the parent company of Google, authorized $8.6 billion in stock purchases. PepsiCo announced $15 billion in planned buybacks. Chip gear maker Applied Materials disclosed plans for a $6 billion program to buy back their own shares. And late last month, Lowe's also unveiled plans for another $5 billion in stock buybacks. And more are on the way. In fact, Apple might authorize $30 billion in shares when it reports its next quarterly earnings in April. That would be on top of the $30 billion it already spends each year to buy back its shares. All these companies, they're taking massive amounts of money and going, well, we don't have anything else to do with it. Let's go buy back our shares, which increase shareholder profit. Now, Howard Silverblatt, a senior analyst with the S&P Dow Jones Indices, says, quote, I'm expecting buybacks to get to a record for 2018. And if I'm disappointed, there's a lot of people with me. Actually, there will not be a lot of people. The richest 10% of households own 84% of the stocks. The top 1% of households own about 40% of the stocks. So a lot of people is actually a very small sliver of the American population. So no, this is likely not going to help you, these stock buybacks. And increasing corporate profits also really does not help you all that much. Now, what they need to do, these companies, should start paying their fair share in taxes. They should also raise their wages to at least a living wage. And more importantly than just raising taxes is actually allocating the taxes for things that actually work. Raising taxes isn't going to do a whole lot if we continue to spend on the same shit that we already spend on. If we keep putting all our resources in the military, well, that doesn't help regular people. No, what we need to do is we actually need to do things like Medicare for all. What we need to do is expand Social Security. What we need to do is give or spend money on making sure that colleges and universities are tuition free. We should also have a real infrastructure plan, not the Trump plan of, hey, let's give it to the corporations and put toll roads everywhere. No, that's not where we should go. We need to get away from the idea that tax cuts create jobs. They do not. They do not grow the economy either. No, they starve revenue from vital programs. And it gives Republicans and corporate Democrats an excuse to cut social welfare programs. I mean, again, they want to cut in the latest budget Social Security, Medicare. They want to cut Medicaid by $1 trillion and turn the food stamp program into a food box program. This is what they plan on doing with the money. Again, these corporations, they're not going to help their workers. They never planned to do anything to help their workers. This is all about padding their bottom line, as usual. Do not fall for it. These tax cuts are only there. Were only designed to help the rich at your expense. Okay. Moving on, we got another Supreme Court story. Actually, you know what? Let me go to something else, actually. Let's go back. All right. Today in late stage capitalism, just 2 people made enough from their investments to feed America's hungry. Now, this is Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg and Amazon founder Jeff Bezos. They reportedly made over $64 billion from their investments alone. According to Forbes and Credit Suisse, while U.S. wealth increased by $8.5 trillion in 2017, the richest 2% received $1.15 trillion worth of wealth. Now, that is more than the total cost of Medicaid. Medicaid, both federal and state spending, is less than what the richest 2% got last year. It's insane. Now, not only that, that's actually more than the complete safety net, both mandatory and discretionary spending. That also includes, that basically includes everything that people call welfare. So 2 people, the top 2%, made more than the entire safety net program. That's insane. Now, according to Common Dreams, that means the second half of the richest 2% of Americans with an average net worth of approximately $10 million outgained the safety net all by themselves in the past year. Not only that, but the richest 2 to 5%, those Americans with an average net worth of about $2.5 million, accumulated enough wealth in 2017 to pay for the safety net 4 times. Jesus. Now look, food stamps. So look, food stamps, we talked about the SNAP program. They provide about $1.50 per meal for 42 million Americans. That is mostly children, the elderly, and the disabled. That costs $64 billion. Again, Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg made over $64 billion last year from investments alone. Doesn't have anything to do with their company. That's just sitting around and waiting for investment to accrue wealth. Jesus. So again, 2 men made more sitting around than we spend to make sure 42 million Americans do not starve. I wonder if income inequality is the problem. According to Common Dreams, as I said, Bezos has used tax havens and high-priced lobbyists to avoid the taxes owed by his company. In fact, I did a report recently where Amazon does not pay any taxes whatsoever. Thanks to the Trump tax cut, they got a nearly $800 million tax return. We're getting robbed. And we're continuing to let these corporations rob us blind. This is the greatest, these tax cuts from the Trump administration are the biggest robbery in American history. Now, and again, they can do all this legally. Now, Mark Zuckerberg apparently created a charitable foundation, which is basically a tax-exempt, limited liability company. Now, it's tricks like that, paying lobbyists and doing tax havens and creating these foundations that allow wealthy people to avoid paying their fair share in taxes. I think I see the real problem. It ain't food stamps. It's not the welfare system. It's the inequality. Now, I know, of course, I'm going to get conservatives. Jeff, food stamps are filled with waste, fraud, and abuse. I mean, look, I see people trading food stamps for, what? For money. Yeah, okay. So what? You're going to cut food stamps and send them, what, a food box filled with pre-selected foods that don't take into account special diets or allergies? The very few people that do misuse the program basically will ruin it for everybody else? Yes, there is some fraud, but it's actually an incredibly low amount. The U.S. Department of Agriculture has estimated that only 1 penny of every food stamp dollar is used fraudulently. That means 99 cents of that dollar is used legitimately for people to stave off hunger. That's an incredibly low fraud rate. And look, they have that such a low rate because they pursue waste, fraud, and abuse incredibly aggressively. It is one of the most efficient programs. Moody's Analytics estimated that for every $1 increase in SNAP benefits during 2009, when the economy was in recession, generated about $1.70 in economic activity. So not only does it have a low fraud rate, but it has a very high rate of economic activity. It's not the food stamps that's ruining the economy. It's the inequality of people like Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg and gigantic wealthy corporations that use their ability to evade taxes to shift the tax burden onto you. Now, the conservatives, they want to blame all this stuff, the deficit, the lack of jobs and things, on poor people getting food stamps. That's not the real problem. They want to shift the focus away because the real problem comes from the donors. They've got to pay their fair share. Okay. All right, we got more. Let's go with one more story here. That's not it. That's not the one. There we go. Bad news for the millions of people who are currently paying off their student loans. The Trump administration is now looking into prevent states from protecting borrowers from student loan collection companies. According to Politico, Education Secretary Betsy DeVos is preparing to issue a declaration that companies collecting federal student loans are now off limits for state lawmakers and regulators. They argue that only the federal government, not the states, has the authority to oversee federal student loan servicers, according to a draft of the document obtained by Politico. Now, that includes industry giants like Navient and Nelnet, one of which I have personal experience with. But wait a minute, what about states' rights? If the states want to set their rules on whether or not certain practices are allowed, shouldn't the states be able to do so? Well, look, you ask a conservative about states' rights, and they'll tell you, states' rights are fantastic. We got states' rights. But then when you say, well, I want to use my states' rights to protect against my citizens against corporations that are possibly milking them for profit, well, and then they'll say, oh, no, I didn't mean those states' rights. I meant states' rights to ban gay people from or transgender people from bathrooms and make bakers, allow bakers to discriminate against gay people. We didn't mean against corporations. No, we love the corporations. So that's what they're at. Now, the attempt by the Education and Justice Departments to help the student loan industry pushes back against growing scrutiny from states. So that's why they're doing this. Understand, a lot of states have stepped up and said, wait a minute, your practices are predatory. And so, yeah, we're gonna protect our own people that are inside our state. I mean, we can't legislate for, Texas or Alabama, but we can at least protect people in Massachusetts or California. And again, of course, it is mostly blue states that are leading this effort. Now, this attempt by the Education and Justice Department to help these borrowers also comes after the student loan industry has for months lobbied the federal government for protection against from the states' efforts to crack down on them. Industry groups say that a patchwork of state rules governing student loan servicing will make it more difficult and costly for companies to operate across the country. And I don't really see a downside here. I don't believe these companies should exist in the first place. Why? Because I believe college should be free. It should be free to be able to attain an education if you want one. Now, unfortunately, we live in America, which means putting 42 million people in debt. Just get an education is normal and, of course, is required for getting a decent paying job. Now, right now, the department each year pays $1 billion to a handful of student loan companies that collect debt on behalf of the federal government. Now, they do that on the $1.4 trillion in debt that regular people have amassed through rising, of course, college tuition rates. So college is 1,000% more expensive than it was in the 60s, 70s. And so people have had to take out these loans, sometimes leaving them $100,000 in debt. It's insanity. So now, in response to this growing debt collection industry, more than a dozen states have either passed or considering laws that would have tightened regulations on these student loan companies. The new rules are needed to improve the quality of student loan servicing and curb predatory practices by some of those businesses. Now, as I said before, Betsy DeVos, not exactly a fan of protecting students. No, she actually enjoys the student loan industry. So what she did is that she filed this notice, and it also comes after another part of the Trump administration went to deregulating this industry. Now, the Justice Department made a filing earlier this year when it sided with the federal student loan servicer accused by Massachusetts of violating state consumer protection law. Now, Trump administration attorneys argued in a statement of interest that the state couldn't pursue legal claims against the servicer because they are preempted by federal law, that federal law now protecting student loan servicers. Again, states' rights, oh, no, those don't apply because you want to actually protect consumers. Well, we in the Trump administration want to protect corporations. So not only, and not only are they doing this, right? Some of the rules passed by the Education Department ordered the loan companies that work for the agency to avoid responding to Freedom of Information requests. So not only can states not protect their own residents, but no one is actually allowed to get information on what these companies may be doing wrong. Well, great. There's a problem with that. They're being paid by taxpayer money to go and basically shake down the same citizenry if you have a student loan. Now, of course, look, a lot of states are coming after these rules. In fact, half the country's attorneys general disagree with DeVos, and they argued that states do have a right to oversee companies operating within their borders. Now, the industry's lobbying efforts last year drew criticism from a group of 25 state attorneys general. Now, it's led by New York Attorney General Eric Schneiderman. Now, they urged DeVos to reject an ongoing campaign by student loan servicers and debt collectors to secure immunity for themselves from state level oversight and enforcement. Now, they need that state level enforcement because the federal government has basically shown that they will not enforce protections and that they will always side with the debt collectors. Now, they said the education department cannot sweep away any state laws that apply to a student loan servicer and debt collector. Now, this letter was signed by GOP attorneys general as well as attorneys generals in liberal states. Now, this is Ken Paxton of Texas. He signed on to this. Herbert Slattery of Tennessee, and Cynthia Kaufman of Colorado. So you even have Republicans going, well, no, wait a minute. No, we're in our states. We do believe in states' rights, and we believe that we should be protecting the people in our states from these predatory practices, showing at least that there are some Republicans out there that are not completely bought by the industry. Now, do you think that Betsy DeVos will listen? No, absolutely not. She works for the corporations, and I think her ultimate goal is to make college unaffordable. They want it to make it so the cost so high that nobody goes. Nobody gets educated. Now, her idea of education means bringing Jesus back into the classroom. Not actual Jesus, but free market Jesus. Because what is the biggest threat to fundamentalist religion? Which she is definitely a fundamentalist. Education. Education is the biggest threat to fundamentalist religion. Education, facts, knowing things. But again, people like DeVos don't want you to get educated. They don't want you to know things. They don't want, and they especially don't want you to fight back against their power. And again, part of this, I think, is making school unaffordable. Because you think about it, you see all these people taking out massive debts. You got these, of course, bill collectors, debt collectors that are out there doing everything that they can to go after that $1.4 trillion. It's going to make a lot of people think it's not worth the effort, especially when you have predatory practices. And so, again, that's my speculation, but I really do think that she wants to basically not have anybody go to college, unless you're, of course, incredibly wealthy. Now, again, the blue states, they're fighting against this, and even some red states, which is great to see. Now, the efforts are framed as a borrower's bill of rights. I think we need that. And what it would do is, of course, impose new requirements on loan servicers and establish a licensing system. And if you're not licensed, then you cannot operate in that state. Now, that's a start. Now, the CFPB, that is before it was taken over by Mick Mulvaney, also took aim at the industry. This was under Richard Cordray. Officials there have publicly suggested that the education department hasn't done enough to police its own contracted loan collectors. Now, this was the Bureau's top student loan official, a man by the name of Seth Frotman, testified in states in favor of new regulations on the industry. Again, I don't know how that's going to shake out now that Mick Mulvaney basically has requested no additional money for the budget for the CFPB. And look, when he was in Congress, tried to kill it several times. So anything that the CFPB has been working on to protect consumers, well, they're not going to be working on anymore. Now, however, last year, under Cordray, along with the attorney generals of Illinois, Washington, and Pennsylvania, all last year brought separate lawsuits against Navient over a range of big business practices. The company was accused of deceiving borrowers, misallocating payments, and steering borrowers into costly forbearances rather than income-based repayment programs. And so, look, again, there is a reason that these attorneys general and these states have tried to put up rules barring these companies from doing things because they have been found to have done these things that have based themselves on a predatory model. And again, that's the model for debt collection, where they threaten you, they do everything that they can to, again, increase their profit, because what they do is they buy debt from other places. They buy this debt, or they're contracted to collect this debt, and they will do everything they can in their power to be able to do so. That includes dishonest, predatory practices. There has to be some protection against that. Now, Beyond that, again, you know my position, free college tuition. Now, that's not going to solve the debt problem, at least the people who have already amassed debt. But my solution to that is somewhat controversial, and I've done a video on it before, but we should really look at student loan forgiveness for everybody. I know, right? Incredibly controversial, super lib. But look, my reasoning is, again, it will help the economy. There's actually a study out there that is that shows that. And not only that, but if we don't do something about this $1.4 trillion bubble that we have, it is going to burst. And when that happens, I don't know what the impact on the overall economy is going to be, but I can tell you that it probably isn't going to be good. So we do have to protect people against these student loan borrowing companies, but overall, nothing short of free college for all and forgiving debts is going to solve this problem with student loans. Okay. That's it. That's all I got for you guys today. We'll be back tomorrow. We got Ron Placone, hopefully going to be on the show. So tune in for that. Very exciting. And we'll have a lot of interesting topics, including, I think, one of them was sent in by a viewer. I think we might actually talk about sex work. Interesting. So you're not going to want to miss that. And then, of course, we'll have plenty of stuff. We're going to hammer some of the corporate Democrats as well. So tune in. It's going to be fantastic. All right, everybody. Make sure to hit that like and share button. Subscribe to the channel. Consider becoming a patron. Go to patreon.com/TYTNation if you want to support the show. Everybody else, I am out. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Love you guys. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, TYT Nation. We'll see you tomorrow.